You made 10 policy pledges for this campaign. Let's see how watertight they are. Can you guarantee that under your leadership, the 2019 Labour commitments to nationalise water, energy, rail, the Royal Mail, they'll all be in Labour's next election manifesto?
I've made that.
Can you believe what happened when Keir Starmer went head-to-head with Andrew Neil, one of the toughest interviewers in politics? Neil wasn't there for vague or drawn-out answers. He wanted clear, direct responses. But Starmer seemed caught off guard. As Neil pressed him with sharp, pointed questions, Starmer stumbled. He tried to dodge, but Neil wasn't letting go. British politics. Like this one, don't forget to like the video. And subscribe to Dark British. Believe it or not, over 98% of viewers watch our content without hitting the follow button. Subscribing is completely free. Question after question, Neil kept pushing, asking exactly what people watching at home wanted to know. For Starmer, it quickly turned into a nightmare. But for Andrew Neil, it was just another day proving why he's so respected as an interviewer. And for viewers across Britain, it was a rare moment, watching someone who hopes to lead the country looking completely unprepared, especially when Neil challenged him directly on his policy promises.
Pledge is not an indication. A pledge is a word, is your word. It's a pledge.
I'm not disputing that. I don't have any problem.
So is it a pledge that these industries will be in your manifesto for nationalisation?
Well, the pledge is 3 lines, Andrew. You're asking me for more detail and I'm giving it to you.
Well, but the fact is the 2016 Trade Union Act, when it comes to cribbing and curtailing union power, is not the key legislation. The key legislation that does that was passed a long time before, and your pledge doesn't mention any of that.
Andrew, how can you say I'm hiding behind a process when it's the Labour Party process? The Labour Party, beginning
because you're hiding behind the process.
No, the Labour Party said...
Why don't you do what the other candidates do and tell... Don't Labour members have a right, as they decide whether to vote for you or not, they want to know where your money's coming from?
The first question was simple and direct. Where's your campaign money coming from? Neil asked. But instead of giving a straight answer, Starmer tried to shift the focus to rules and paperwork. Neil wasn't having it. He pressed on, saying, other politicians tell us who their donors are, so why can't you? It was clear Neil wanted transparency, and he wasn't going to let Starmer dodge the question.
I've got people from different parts of the party on my campaign working together, because I know that simply saying unity isn't enough. Everybody's going to say that.
That's not unpalatable. What I'm asking you is a position you're taking that the Corbyn left will find unpalatable.
Well, I'm not particularly interested in finding things that they find palatable or unpalatable.
Starmer still avoided giving a clear answer, vaguely mentioning trade unions and other supporters, but never naming his biggest backers. Neil didn't let it go. He kept pressing, asking why Starmer was being so evasive and refusing to let the issue slide. Neil demanded clear, straightforward answers.
You seem to be hiding behind this process. Why won't you simply tell us tonight who are your 5 biggest donors?
Andrew, how can you say I'm hiding behind a process when it's the Labour Party process? The Labour Party, beginning of...
Because you're hiding behind the process.
No, the Labour Party said...
Why don't you do what the other candidates do and tell... Don't Labour members have a right, as they decide whether to vote for you or not, they want to know where your money's coming from? I've
been asked that many times. I've said it's coming from trade unions, from crowdfunding, from individual donations.
Who's your biggest donor?
It's coming from those 3. One of my biggest donors was put up on the website, I think, yesterday.
Right, that's one of the lawyer.
Yes.
That's the law. But who are your 5 biggest donors?
Well,
you haven't announced. You've only announced about £125,000 worth of donations. This campaign costs a lot more than that.
This wasn't just about money. It was about trust. People want to know who is funding their leaders. And if Starmer couldn't answer a simple, direct question like this, what else might he be hiding? What's happening in France shows a bigger problem: the collapse of centrist politics and the failure of their policies. These are the same kinds of policies Starmer wants to bring to Britain. If he fails, we must think carefully about what that would mean. His agenda leans heavily on net zero, takes a softer stance on immigration, supports high taxes, and focuses more on city issues than the challenges faced by smaller towns and rural areas. If his leadership collapses, don't expect the political scene to swing left. It's more likely to move toward a stronger populist right. Neil made a sharp point here. Starmer often speaks about honesty and fairness, but in this interview, he didn't appear honest. Instead of being clear, he dodged the truth, and that's exactly what voters don't want from their leaders. Neil then pressed Starmer on his past promises. You said you'd bring key industries back into public ownership and scrap tuition fees. Are those still your commitments?
But there's a bigger principle at stake, that Labour Party members who are being asked to vote for you should know who's bankrolling your campaign.
That is why the Labour Party set up those rules.
But you won't tell us.
The Labour Party rules say, carry out the checks, which we have to carry out, and I've got a compliance team doing that. Once you're satisfied the checks are carried out and the donations are proper in order, they go to the parliamentary authorities who put them on the parliamentary website so that everybody can see them. I've been following that procedure. That is exactly the parliamentary rules.
But the other candidates...
Starmer didn't give a clear yes or no. Instead, he brushed it off by calling them pledges and promised more details would come later. But Neil wasn't satisfied. He pressed harder, saying, "A pledge is a promise. Will you keep it or not?"
A pledge is not an indication. A pledge is a word, is your word. It's a pledge.
I'm not disputing that. I don't have any problem.
So is it a pledge that these industries will be in your manifesto for nationalisation?
Yes, it is. The point I'm making to you is the manifesto will have to have a lot more than that.
Of course, I understand.
It's not a manifesto.
Well, what about university tuition fees then? Will you remain committed to scrapping them in your first term?
They're all pledges, Andrew. So the answer to these questions is yes.
Neil pointed out that Starmer's big promises from the past might never actually happen. For viewers, this was a serious moment. It made Starmer look like someone who just says whatever people want to hear. Neil's tough questions highlighted something important. If leaders don't stick to their commitments, how can the public ever trust them? Then Neil shifted the focus to leadership itself, asking how Starmer plans to unite the Labour Party. The party is deeply divided, with one side still loyal to Jeremy Corbyn and the other demanding change. Neil pressed Starmer on how he plans to bring both sides together and truly lead.
So university tuition fees being scrapped will be in a Starmer manifesto?
Yes, that's why it's
the next election. OK. Why then doesn't the Labour left trust you?
Well, I'm asking members to vote for me in this election. We will find out on the 4th of April what the members have decided. And I am very happy making my case to our members and obviously letting them decide.
You pledged that you would strengthen workers' rights.
I did.
By repealing the 2016 Trade Union Act. Would you go further and repeal all the union laws passed since Mrs Thatcher?
Well, I would repeal all of those that inhibit collective action. There's been a lot of provisions since then, most of them in trade union acts,
they nearly all
but
do.
not all.
As usual, Starmer avoided giving a clear answer. He spoke about unity, but never explained how he actually plans to bring people together. Neil wasn't convinced. He argued that unity on its own isn't enough and pressed Starmer for a real plan. But instead of answering, Starmer sidestepped the question, clearly trying not to upset either side of his divided party. That gave the impression he's more focused on pleasing everyone than showing the decisiveness a strong leader needs. It raised serious doubts about whether he can lead the country if he's struggling to lead his own party. Neil reminded him that real leadership takes courage and the strength to stand firm even when it's difficult. Starmer's vague answers left many people questioning if he's truly the right person for the job.
Why haven't you declared all the major donors who are funding your leadership campaign?
Well, at the beginning of the campaign, the Labour Party set out the rules that we should all comply with, and they briefed us on it. And they involve doing the necessary checks on any donations, and then passing it to the parliamentary authorities so that they can be published. And I'm following those rules.
But that's process.
That's not process, that's
well,
the
you're
rules.
following the process, but there's a bigger principle at stake, that Labour Party members who are being asked to vote for you should know who's bankrolling your campaign.
Neil then moved the discussion to housing, an issue that matters deeply to people across the country. He brought up a striking statistic: 5 out of every 7 new homes are being given to migrants. How is that fair to local people who are already struggling to find a place to live? Neil asked sharply.
Well, Gareth Snell was a Labour MP for Stoke.
Yeah.
Not anymore. He lost. He says he personally begged you to rethink the referendum policy. But he said he was ignored, in his words, because you thought being popular with the membership was more important to you than holding parliamentary seats. He sees you as a key reason for the defeat in December.
Neil wasn't impressed with Starr's reply. While Starmer spoke about building more homes and helping everyone, his words didn't sound convincing or strong enough. Neil pressed harder, demanding why Labour hasn't done more to fix the housing crisis. This moment struck a chord with many viewers. Housing is a real struggle for countless families, and people want leaders who will truly stand up for them, especially when they feel forgotten or left behind. Neil painted Starmer as someone who talks a lot about helping people but falls short when it comes to taking real, decisive action.
Well, Andrew, Gareth has his own view. What I can tell you is that members of Parliament in those seats, Toby Perkins in Chesterfield, Jenny Chapman, who lost her seat in Darlington, Emma Hardy in Hull, are all supporting me in this campaign, and they're all very close to their communities. So I know what Gareth said.
Right.
But look, one of the things...
Another say that something...
Let me finish, because that's a fair challenge to me. You know? So what I've been trying to show in my campaign is that I do have the support and the backing of representatives, MPs, those who were MPs, and councillors.
The discussion raised another crucial point. Starmer's vague answers left many wondering if he truly understands what people are going through. Neil's tough questions made it clear that leadership isn't just about saying the right things, it's about delivering real solutions. Starmer's struggle to provide those solutions made him appear disconnected from the everyday struggles people face.
And we want decisions about us made by us. So I've actually, for the last 3.5 years, had those conversations in those communities, because I know very well that in my constituency we voted heavily for Remain.
Of course.
And that's why I have been to a lot of other places
on the
to have
red
those
wall,
conversations.
or what's left of the red wall, which isn't much, that the conversations weren't gritty enough, because you now want free movement with the European Union to continue.
Well, we talked a lot about free movement in those areas.
And you want it to continue.
Actually, when we had the discussion, again, got past the gritty bit, and there's a lot of respect people have when you do have a conversation with them. There's a lot said by people about what people think. Actually, I would say go and spend some time and actually have those conversations. When we got to the nitty-gritty of it, which is, should people in this country be able to go and work in Europe? Should those in Europe be able to come to work here? Most people thought that was a good idea.
Neil's questions painted Starmer as a politician who shifts his stance depending on the situation. Leadership isn't just about making promises, it's about sticking to them even when the pressure is high. Throughout the interview, it became clear that Starmer was frustrated. He sighed, dodged questions, and kept circling back to the same points. Meanwhile, Neil stayed calm and composed as Starmer struggled to keep up. This mattered because leaders are often judged by how they handle pressure. Starmer didn't completely lose his cool, but he came across as defensive and unsettled. Neil, on the other hand, was relentless, cutting off vague answers and pushing hard for clarity.
Should people in this country be able to study in Europe? And should people in Europe now,
and all that adds up to free movement.
Around that, but Andrew, you're missing my point. In those communities where I had those discussions, actually, we were. I'm not saying everybody.
So people up there who voted Tory, used to vote Labour, voted Tory, immigration being a big issue.
Neil's questions painted Starmer as a politician who changes his stance depending on the moment. Leadership isn't just about making promises, it's about keeping them even when the pressure is on. Throughout the interview, it became clear that Starmer was frustrated. He sighed, dodged questions, and kept circling back to the same points. Meanwhile, Neil stayed calm and composed while Starmer struggled to keep up. This was important because leaders are often judged by how they handle pressure. Starmer didn't completely lose his cool, but he came across as defensive and unsettled. Neil, on the other hand, was relentless, cutting off vague answers and pressing hard for clarity.